Hey guys, it's me again. I decided, the end of that video on weather modification was just a little rushed. So I decided to just do a couple minutes to just do it justice and finish this part up. So again, when we study climate after I return, we'll spend more time talking about these greenhouse gases, things like carbon dioxide. But there's many others, nitrous oxide, sulfur dioxide, and these gases are the byproducts of burning of fossil fuels, and that's something we often don't really think much about. In textbooks you see pictures of smokestacks and these gases coming out, and smoke coming out. That's not something that we see very often around here. We see that a lot more in the Midwest, where there's a lot of manufacturing, places like Detroit, where there's a lot of car factories and things like that. However, we do have a lot of burning fossil fuels here. Most of us heat our homes with oil. We all use gasoline to drive cars and diesel fuel for the school buses and so on. And all of that burning produces gases that are causing a rise in global temperature. And we'll talk about this more when we study climate, but just while we're talking about weather modification, one idea to help cool the planet off, because you won't find really too many scientists out there that will disagree that the planet is getting warmer. And I think that that's even obvious to most of us. If you look at ski resorts, even if you're a skier, 50, 60 years ago, there was no such thing as artificial snow. We couldn't make snow. It was entirely dependent on naturally occurring snow, and we had it. And there were many more ski mountains than there are today. A place like Mountain Creek down in New Jersey would not have opened this year without the ability to make snow. And actually, let me just make this point about artificial snow too, because sometimes students get a little mixed up about it. It's just, it's water. It's not a chemical, it's not plastic or anything like that. Basically what they're doing is when the temperatures drop below freezing, they spray basically a really fine mist of water. And then it freezes before it hits the ground and makes essentially snow. It's never as good as real snow though, because it won't have those nice snowflakes. It's more almost like little ice pellets. So yeah, you can ski on it, it works, you can snowboard on it, but it's not the same quality as natural snow. But anyway, the point is that you would find few scientific-minded people that would argue that the planet is not getting warmer. There's a lot of data to support that. Some of the controversy stems from why is the planet getting warmer, and that's another story, and we'll talk about that more with climate. So, there's a lot of questions about, well, what could we do about it? What could we do to keep our planet at a more moderate, comfortable temperature and keep that temperature from rising as much? And one idea is to artificially make lots of clouds. We could take the idea of jet contrails or something similar, or maybe add lots of condensation nuclei, do something to create a lot more clouds. And clouds reflect a lot of light. So the idea is, remember, insolation, incoming solar radiation, it would hit the tops of the clouds and get bounced off to space. And that idea really probably could work. But the reason I think it's really a terrible idea is that you're really experimenting with the entire planet. And what if it doesn't work? Okay, what if it does the opposite? What if it works too well and then our planet becomes a giant ball of ice? Okay, that is a real possibility. And when you're talking about changes on a global scale, it's going to be very difficult to hit the brakes on that and just stop doing it quickly anyway. So I think that these ideas of trying to modify the weather for the entire planet are very risky. Here's another one. These large helium balloons would go up into the atmosphere and reflect light, basically. So most of these ideas involve some way of reflecting light, things like that. In this one, they're talking about millions of tiny chemical particles act like a mirror to reflect sun rays back into space. Okay, so the essential idea is to just reflect light back out into space. But again, I think that that's really risky business. One of the craziest ideas I've seen involved putting lots of mirrors into space in orbit around the planet. And the mirrors would reflect that incoming solar radiation, that insolation, and keep the planet a little bit cooler that way. But I don't think that any of these ideas are good, even though they might be technologically very difficult. I'm sure if we put our minds to it as a global society, we could probably actually make these things happen, even though they might look far-fetched. I'm sure it could be done. We know how to make big mirrors. We know how to get things into space. It really just requires money and the will to do it. But I think that the risks are just way too high. If we make a mistake and reflect too much light, then the planet might get uncomfortably cold. Okay, so anyway, climate is something that we'll talk about again when I return. And remember, weather is the day-to-day events. Climate is more long-term. So we'll talk about the long-term weather or the climate when I return, which will be on Monday, the 18th. All right, so that's it. I just wanted to go back and really just finish this part up right. So anyway, I'll be back soon.